Look at this, man. This is the Fiat Caccia Rosatelli 32. It's a plane from the actually mid-1930s, and it played a very prominent role in the Spanish Civil War. This plane here was actually the most successful fighter model of the Spanish Civil War, even more successful than the Messerschmitt 109 itself. All right, because most of the aerial kills, the major air battles, were carried out with this plane. Here, it equipped both Franco's nationalist forces and the Aviazione Legionaria, which was the Italian volunteer component. There in Spain, which is similar to the German Condor Legion's equivalent, right, in Spain, you can see here that this plane even has Spanish markings. It's got Spain's markings. Nationalist. You can see that cross there on its tail, that black X, right? That's characteristic of the nationalist forces, and it's the symbol of the squadron, La Cucaracha, right? Which is the cockroach that was flown by the Italian pilots, right? The second squadron of the Legionary Aviation. And here you have the pinnacle of biplane design of the Fiat Caccia Rosatelli 42 is a plane that was developed by Fiat to be a transitional fighter between the fabric-covered biplanes, which are these here, right? The Fiat Caccia Rosatelli 32 and the metal monoplane aircraft that we will get to know in a little while. All right, so this plane here, as you can see, has this yellow stem, which is a reference to the operation of this aircraft here in Cairo in the Italian Air Corps, which was the Italian component that fought in the Battle of Britain. And precisely because of that, there are some examples, if I'm not mistaken, 2 of them, still in the possession of the English. There at the Royal Air Force Museum in Hendon, they have one of them on display and another one that is being prepared. The plane is being restored to flying condition again. Here in Italy, unfortunately, we have this wonderful, beautiful example of the Caccia Rosatelli 42 here with the colors of the CAI, right? And we can see that all of Italy's involvement in World War II is surrounded by this aircraft. Mario Vicentini, perhaps, is considered by many people to be the greatest of the Italian aces in World War II, who flew over in Italian East Africa. He flew these planes here, look, to be able to shoot down English aircraft that operated in that region. But now we're going to the crown jewel here at Vinha di Valle, which is this hall here. Come with me. This hall has some of the rarest planes, the large single-engine aircraft of the Italian Air Force. Look, here we have a Savoia Marchetti SM-79, a Fiat G212, here a Savoia Marchetti 82, and here a Cont C506. We're going to get to know all of them. Look here, follow me. I'm going to start by showing you this little treasure here, which are these wrecks of Reggiani 2000. Reggiani 2000. It's a fighter that competed in the Series 0 process in 1939. And it wasn't the one chosen. The one chosen was the Mach 200, which you'll get to know in a bit. But this plane received a consolation contract from the Italian government, and it was actually exported. It was exported to Hungary and also to Sweden. So there's an example of this plane preserved in Stockholm today, completely restored to its original condition. And here in Italy, these wrecks were discovered underwater in the Mediterranean, and they're still in this condition to this day. I don't know if they intend to restore this plane to a more complete state, but anyway, it's very interesting to see one of these in person. The Reggiani 2000 really struggled with its radial engine, which was later replaced by a German inline engine. Daimler-Benz 601, built under license in Italy by Alfa Romeo, resulting in the Reggiani 2001. We have a 2002 over there, which I'll show you in a moment. But here we have a Savoia Marchetti SM-82. The marsupialer or kangaroo, for many it's a militarized version of the SM-75, which was a passenger plane that even flew to Brazil with LAT until 1942. This plane had a transatlantic capacity to carry passengers, and in this configuration it had a very large cargo capacity. In fact, it was the only plane that could make the connection between Italian North Africa, Libya up there in the desert, and Italian East Africa, which was Ethiopia, Eritrea, and also Somalia. And it could carry, inside this cargo hold here, it could carry a disassembled Fiat Caccia Rosatelli, 42 without the wings. There, this plane was involved in one of the most famous actions of the air network, which was the bombing of Manama in 1940. And the SM-75, it was involved in the famous Rome-Tokyo flight in 1942, taking off, in the end, from Zaporizhia, over there in Ukraine, and flying over the south of the Soviet Union, Mongolia, until it reached China, in the Chinese part that was occupied by the Japanese, making the connection all the way to Tokyo. It was an incredible feat accomplished by Antonio Locatelli, right? And flying a plane very similar to this one. Here we have the famous Mach C-200, right? The first single-engine fighter plane. Metallic one of the aeronautical network, which still struggled with the radial engine here in the front, and also an open cockpit, which was really bad for this plane. When it was used down in the south of the Soviet Union in 1941, right? Supporting the Italian Expeditionary Corps in Russia. Here you can see these white markings on the wings in the shape of a triangle, which are characteristic of the 22nd Autonomous Group, which operated in the south of the Soviet Union. And there, the very famous insignia of the scarecrow smoking red stars, a creation of General Giuseppe Biron, who was a fighter pilot. He used to fly at that time, right? He was even the commander of some units of the Italian Air Force after the war. I had the pleasure of corresponding with General Byron a few years before his death, which has been going on for some time now, right? Here we have a Nardi FN 305, a reconnaissance and also a liaison aircraft. It's a slightly less famous World War II plane that didn't play a very important role, right? And here we have a Reggiani Re 2002. This is an evolution of the Re 2000, of which we have the wreckage over there. With a radial engine, this plane with a radial engine was designed for attack missions, attack units, and not for fighter missions. Unlike the Re 2001, which had an inline engine, more effective, right? More efficient. So the career of this plane as well, the number produced was smaller because Reggiani was a smaller factory and didn't have such a large industrial capacity. Look at the size of this plane here. This is the G212, the Fiat G212, an evolution of the Fiat G12 from 1943. It's a monstrous, magnificent plane, a tri-motor that is like the culmination of the Italian tri-motor formula from World War II as well. And there was, that famous case with the team, the Sport Club of Turin, that had an accident in this plane here, and the whole team died, right? In this plane here, down here, interestingly, we have an Autoblinda 41, a very famous Italian armored reconnaissance vehicle from World War II. Yeah, which also had this characteristic turret from the M1340 and M1441 tanks, and interestingly, it could be driven from both sides, right? Both axles here, both the front and the rear, were able to maneuver, so it could go either that way or this way. Here the engine is on the other side. Here we only have front steering, right? A front opening for the driver. But if you look inside, you'll see a steering wheel that's on the other side. There's a steering wheel there so the guy can drive the car from the other side. Inside there, see, there's a slit for him to observe. So the vehicle had this interesting feature. It could be driven from both sides. Here we have an Alfa Romeo RA 1000 engine and Monzoni, which is the Italian version of the Daimler-Benz 601. This is the version built under license in Italy, which powered, look at that, the Mach 202. This plane you're seeing here, the Folgore, right? The Mach 202 Folgore. the champion of Series 2 of the Regia Aeronautica, which entered combat at the very end of 1941 over in the North African desert. It was already armed with 4 machine guns, allowing pilots to shoot down twin-engine bomber aircraft. But anything above that, like a 4-engine plane, it was already complicated to shoot down with this armament. This plane here has the paint scheme of the 4th Stormo Francesco Baracca. You can see the inscription here. 4F Baracca, which you can see at the end there on the rear fuselage, has the Cavallino Rampante, the black horse used by Francesco Baracca in World War I, and also by Enzo Ferrari on Ferrari's planes. So the Cavallino Rampante is the symbol of the 4th Stormo Francesco Baracca. The 4th Stormo is the 4th fighter wing and was a kind of ace club of the Regia Aeronautica. In World War II, the great pilots with the most aerial victories flew in this unit. Here, next to it, we have the more developed, more powerful brother of the C-202, which is the C-205. The Mach 205 finally gave Italian pilots the ability to shoot down 4-engine bombers. And why? Because of this. Here, 20mm cannons mounted on the wings, firing 20mm explosive shells at those planes. One of the first pilots who fought in the cockpit of a plane like this was Luigi Guerini. We have a video here on the channel if you want to look up the biography of Luigi Guerini Vespa, Arrabbiata. You'll find Luigi Guerini. He shot down a 4-engine Boeing B-17 with a plane like this in 1943. Okay? And another competitor from Series 5, which also got a consolation contract, was the Fiat G-55 Centauro. Do you see it here? Fiat G-55. It's a plane that also has a cannon, a pair of cannons on the wings, 20mm. It was produced in smaller numbers, had highly praised performance, even superior to the Messerschmitt 109 in several aspects. And what about this plane here? It was used in particular by the Montefusco Bonnet Complementary Squadron, which was a squadron created to defend the Fiat factory in Turin, starting from the second half of 1943. Okay, so this plane here today actually enjoys the status of being the only one of its kind in the world. It's an extremely rare gem. It was rebuilt from the wreckage of several different units right after the war. So right next to it we have the Gobo Maledetto, or Damned Hunchback, the Cursed Hunchback. Who is that? The Cursed Hunchback is the Savoia Marchetti SM-79, the Sparviero, or Little Hawk, right? Sparviero means Little Hawk, so here in front of it we have the classic Italian 3-engine formula, right? And this plane was originally a bomber, but it was soon realized that against other planes, right? From the Royal Air Force, for example, the Spitfire, which we see there armed with cannons and much faster than it, this plane didn't stand a chance as a bomber aircraft. So it was quickly converted to a role in which it was quite successful, which was the role of an aerial torpedo bomber. So in this role, the SM became known as the Aerosilurante. So Aerosilurante is a term that refers to the torpedoes launched by these planes against British shipping in the Mediterranean. So it was around that time that these planes here faced that wall of anti-aircraft fire from the British ships, right? You can even see in several films from that time these planes attacking at a very low level, right above the waves, right? Men like Giulio Cesare Graziani, Carlo Fagioni, and Carlo Emanuele Buscaglia had a lot of success firing torpedoes with these planes. Here then, it was precisely because of these actions and because of 2 defensive machine guns that are up there. From here you can see the 2 defensive machine guns that are up there. This plane had a kind of hump behind the cockpit up there, so these planes here got the nickname from the British of damned hunchback, which the Italians later translated into Italian as Gobo Maledetto, which means damned hunchback. Here comes a damned hunchback to attack us again. So, that's it. It's probably the most recognized, most famous Italian bomber aircraft of World War II. And next to it, we have a Fieseler Phi 156 Storch, right? Storch, or Stork in German? It's a German reconnaissance plane that became very famous because of Operation Caccia, or the rescue of Mussolini in 1943, carried out by Otto's paratroopers. Scorzini. Okay, so Scorzini, man, would you imagine that Scorzini was a really tall guy? He was about 2 meters tall, right? And after they captured the Campo Imperatore Hotel on top of the Gran Sasso, right, a Luftwaffe pilot, flying a plane like this one, landed the plane uphill near the hotel with the mission of taking Mussolini back to Germany to meet with Hitler, right? But once Mussolini was rescued, Otto Scorzini decided that he would go along on the flight with Mussolini. There was no room. You can see there's only one seat in the back, so only one person could fit. So Scorzini sat in the plane and Mussolini sat on Scorzini's lap in the back in the plane. Because of the extra weight that this plane was carrying, the German paratroopers had to hold the tail of the plane. Everyone held the tail of the plane there, see? While the pilot gave maximum power to the engine here, so he could take off from the top of the mountain. And it was only like this, with maximum acceleration and the plane being held, that he managed to take off, with Mussolini and Scorzini in the back seat. Okay, and then finally, I want to talk to you here about the Kant Z506A gem, right? A beautiful aeronautical gem that we have here, and it's a maritime reconnaissance plane and also a bomber. A seaplane, right? Very big, an Italian trimotor, very similar in shape to our Gobo Maledetto over there. This plane here had the distinction of being the first aircraft ever hijacked in history. The first hijacked plane, the first airplane hijacking happened in one of these. Why? The Italians were transporting some British prisoners in 1942, moving them between bases there in North Africa. When, in the middle of the flight, the British prisoners started a mutiny, managed to overpower the Italian crew, and captured the plane, hijacked the plane and took it to Malta, landed in Malta, and made the Italians prisoners, right? So the first hijacked plane in history was a Kant Z506. Guys, over there we have a Spitfire 9 used by the Italian co-belligerent Air Force after the armistice. A plane that needs no introduction, right? Everyone knows the Spitfire 9. Two 20mm cannons here on the wings, a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, a beautiful airplane. And here we also have the very famous Mustang P-51D with its bubble canopy. The plane that took American fighter pilots to every corner of the globe, right? The fighter aircraft with the longest range in the arsenal. A beautiful ally, it also needs no introduction. We already have a video just about the Mustang here on the channel. If you want to check it out, you can look for the video there. And it was used by the Italian Air Force right after the war, a wonderful aircraft. So here's my invitation for you to join the War Room expeditions. If you want to visit wonderful places like this one, and have the chance that everyone here had to see all these models up close, here, I told the story in a much more expansive way than I did here in the video. Just so you know, we have several expeditions throughout the year, and the links for you to join are right down here. So, we'll stop here for now, but I'll be back soon, in a little while, with our next stop, this time at Mussolini's bunker, there at Villa Torlonia in Rome. Stay tuned, and a big hug from the War Room.